You were never addicted to the drug. You were addicted to relief, to not feeling like a burden for 5 minutes, to escaping a version of yourself that the world never made room for. And when Jung looked at the addict, he didn't see weakness. He saw exile. A man torn from meaning, sedated by substitutes. This video isn't about substances, it's about the silence behind them. It's about the wound so deep it needed noise to survive. Not all prisons have walls. Some come dressed as coping. And not all cravings scream. Some whisper, if I vanish, maybe they'll stop expecting me to be someone I'm not. Most people will judge your behavior, but we'll go deeper into the why. Why do you self-destruct when things get good? Why does peace feel like a lie and pain like home? Why does your shadow know your name better than anyone else? If you've ever stared into the mirror and seen absence, if you've ever called it a phase but secretly knew it was a pattern, if you've ever begged the night to let you feel nothing, just for a while, then this isn't just a video, it's a confession, and maybe your return. He didn't grow up learning love. He grew up learning how not to disturb. To survive, he became useful, quiet, predictable. His childhood wasn't a home, it was a performance stage. So he built a character, one that wouldn't be punished for needing, one that didn't cry, didn't ask, didn't take up space. Every scar was signed with silence, every ache swallowed whole. He wasn't taught to feel, he was taught to function, a ghost boy in a boy's body, rehearsing for applause he'd never receive. So he overcorrected. Discipline became his drug, control his god. But a man can only starve so long before he eats the poison. This is the survival pact. Be useful, and maybe you'll be loved. But what saves a child kills a man. Now he doesn't speak his needs. He negotiates them through exhaustion. He calls it self-control, but it's self-erasure in disguise. You can't form intimacy when your instinct is invisibility. Addiction didn't find him. It waited until his mask cracked and the emptiness beneath gasped for air. He didn't choose the bottle, or the binge, or the screen. He chose not to collapse, and sometimes sedation is the only rebellion silence allows. People ask why he drinks, why he relapses, why he can't stop. But they don't ask what it cost him to look fine for 20 years. They don't ask how many nights he begged reality to let him feel nothing. Not because he's weak, but because numbness was safer than rejection. He didn't grow addicted to substances. He grew addicted to not needing. That's what no one understands. The addict is not chasing pleasure. He's honoring a vow, the unspoken one made by a boy who never mattered. He'd rather destroy himself in private than be rejected in need. Because when need was punished, craving became confession, and no one wants to be seen while confessing how empty they feel. The survival strategy worked. He made it. But making it meant amputating every soft part of himself. He became what the world could use, not what he was, and that fracture is still bleeding. No substance heals a man who doesn't believe he deserves to be whole. So now, every high is a return, not to ecstasy, but to absence. Every relapse is a reenactment of that early exile. He doesn't want more. He wants the memory of being less, because the only identity he trusts is the one built on disappearance, and you can't build a self on top of absence. He doesn't trust comfort. He suspects it. Peace to him is camouflage for betrayal, because the calm never lasted, not in his childhood, not in her arms. So now, every time life gets quiet, he braces for impact. Not because something is wrong, but because it always was. Comfort is a foreign country. He doesn't speak the language. He flinches when it's too quiet, waits for the punchline when it's too kind. That's what trauma does. It recodes safety into suspicion. And even when he's free, he carries the prison inside, not the bars, the expectation of pain. So when peace arrives, he panics. When someone loves him gently, he pulls away. He calls them boring. He calls the calm suffocating. But really, He's just afraid of not knowing how to exist without chaos. Pain was predictable, love is not. That's why every relapse feels like home. Not good, just familiar. The drink doesn't excite him. It soothes the paranoia of peace. It whispers, "See, this is who we are. This is where we belong." Addiction is loyalty to the life that built him. He's not chasing the high. He's honoring the pattern. The script that says you don't deserve ease, only endurance. So he seeks relationships that hurt, jobs that burn, goals that punish, because suffering feels earned, comfort feels stolen, and the boy in him still believes stolen things get taken back. Ask him why he self-sabotages and he'll say, "I don't know." But look closer and you'll see a man allergic to ease, because ease would force him to feel, and feeling would expose the child who never healed. That child learned survive by expecting nothing. So he returns to the noise, the pain, the exhaustion, like an orphan returning to his last known address, not because it's good, but because it's his. He knows how to bleed there, he knows how to vanish, and part of him still thinks that's all he was built for. He doesn't fear pain. He fears the silence that comes after, because in that silence the questions begin. What if I never mattered? What if I was never loved, just tolerated? So he moves, consumes, suffers, just to stay distracted. Not from the world, but from the absence where love should have lived. She wasn't medicine. She was the same wound in different skin. He didn't see her. He saw salvation in her silhouette. And that's the problem. When a starving man sees a feast, he forgets to question the ingredients. They weren't in love. They were anesthetizing each other. Two lonely hearts pretending it was intimacy, not dependency. She didn't ask who he was. She asked what he could fill. He gave her devotion. She gave him distraction. But when they touched, it wasn't connection. It was escape. The bed became a battlefield of unspoken needs, and every kiss was a ceasefire, not a confession. He kept chasing that feeling, not of love, but of finally being enough. Not because she saw him, but because she needed him. That's what made it addictive, being the drug and the addict at once. But need is not love, and hunger is not wholeness. She mirrored his emptiness so perfectly, it felt like understanding. But mirrors don't love you, they reflect you. She reflected his need to be needed, not his truth. And every time she pulled away, he shattered. Not because he lost her, but because he lost who he thought he was in her eyes. They never fought over reality. They fought over illusions. The illusion that she could fix him. The illusion that he could make her stay. They weren't partners. They were each other's temporary rescue missions, and every rescue delayed the reckoning they both feared, themselves. He didn't mourn her. He mourned the version of himself she allowed him to believe in. The man who was finally worthy, desired, chosen. But it was never real. Just trauma chemistry wrapped in dopamine. She didn't abandon him. She just stopped playing the role he cast her in. And he was left staring at a stranger, in her and in the mirror. This is why he spiraled when she left. Not because she was perfect, but because she held the fantasy together. Without her gaze, he didn't know who to be. He confused her presence with identity, and the withdrawal wasn't from love. It was from the illusion of being whole. What he needed was presence. What she gave was performance, and he performed right back. Two actors desperate to feel real, applauding each other's masks. But no mask lasts forever, and when hers slipped, so did his sanity. He was never lazy. He was performing survival. Every achievement was armor, every smile a shield. He didn't succeed to feel proud. He succeeded to not feel disposable. Behind every overachiever is a child terrified of being unloved. So he built perfection like a fortress and died inside it. The unconscious contract was simple. I'll play perfect, just don't abandon me. And the world applauded, called him driven, resilient, focused. But no one saw the exhaustion, the compulsive self-correction. He didn't live, he managed his worth. Perfection wasn't vanity, it was self-defense, because if he failed, even once, the voices would return. You're worthless. You're not enough. They'll leave if they see the real you. So he chased gold stars like oxygen, because silence without praise felt like death. He never rebelled. He collapsed, quietly. Addiction wasn't a tantrum. It was a suicide on delay. Not to die, but to disappear, just for a while. Because being perfect is a job that never ends, and sometimes he just wanted to be no one. You think he's inconsistent, weak, irresponsible, but that's because you don't see the full contract. It says, "I'll numb myself, so you'll keep loving me." He hides his pain to stay acceptable. But every silence writes another line in his unspoken resignation letter. Praise doesn't heal him, it hurts. Because deep down, he knows you're clapping for the costume, not the man underneath. So every compliment feels like confirmation that no one sees him. They just see who he pretends to be. He doesn't sabotage success, he punishes it. Because part of him believes he doesn't deserve peace. And when he gets too close to happiness, the guilt kicks in, not because he hates joy, but because joy exposes the lie, that he ever had to earn love in the first place. So when you see him crumble after praise, don't be surprised. He's not afraid of failure. He's afraid of being celebrated for a mask he can't breathe in. And every relapse is just a reminder, the real him still isn't allowed to exist. He knows how to chase, how to hustle, how to overgive. But when someone offers softness, presence, or care, he recoils, because to receive without paying feels dangerous. Love always had a receipt, and the price was usually himself. He never learned how to feel safe while being seen. He learned that vulnerability meant exposure, and exposure meant betrayal. So now, when affection arrives without a condition, he doesn't relax. He scans for traps. Because for him, every act of kindness hides a hook, and every compliment feels like a setup for future debt. Addiction didn't start with pleasure, it started with protection. When you've been taught that receiving equals danger, you find ways to take instead. So he consumes food, sex, content, substances. Not because he's greedy, but because it's safer to grab than to open. Numbing is control. Receiving is surrender. This is what makes recovery so brutal. It's not about willpower, it's about trust. Can he sit still long enough to let something good touch him? Can he accept without bracing for punishment? The answer often is no, not yet. He doesn't want more, he wants real. But real has always come with a cost. Identity, silence, servitude. So he doubts anyone who offers freely. Because the last time someone said, "I love you," they weaponized it. And part of him still believes that generosity is a performance with a dark ending. You wonder why he keeps going back to the drug, but the drug doesn't ask him to be honest. It doesn't require him to be worthy. It just delivers sensation, silence, momentary peace. No expectations, no rejection, just transaction. He can't stop consuming because no one ever taught him how to receive, how to sit in presence without performing, how to be held without owing, how to be seen without shrinking. So he overdoes, overspends, overindulges, and still feels unfed. The hunger isn't in his body, it's in his being, and food won't touch it, sex won't soothe it, only presence can. But presence terrifies him. Because presence sees the real him, the one he was told should never exist. And that's a hunger no addiction can satisfy. He fails on purpose, not obviously, but precisely enough to stay unseen. He'll miss the deadline, ruin the good thing, walk away when it starts to matter. Because success invites visibility, and visibility feels like threat. You can't be exposed if you never arrive. He doesn't fear growth. He fears being known, because once people know him, the mask has to stay perfect, and perfection is unsustainable when the foundation is shame. So failure becomes a strategy, not a stumble. If he's going to be rejected, Let it be for the role, not the real. This is why he relapses right before breakthroughs. Not because he's afraid to change, but because change demands consistency, and that reveals truth. And truth, that's dangerous. It undresses the illusion of having it together. He prefers the ache of sabotage to the terror of sincerity. He can survive judgment, but not intimacy, because judgment can be argued with. Intimacy, that sees through you, and every time someone gets too close, he detonates the connection. He calls it self-sufficiency, but it's retreat, a retreat from the crime of being real. There's a sick comfort in chaos, in staying broken, uncertain, failing just enough to remain invisible. Because in chaos, no one expects your best. They expect your collapse. And when you collapse, you stay in control. No one can take from a man who gives up first. The tragedy is that he's talented, deep, capable, but capability without permission becomes torment. He fears that if he ever did shine, they'd see the cracks underneath, that success would only delay the next betrayal. So he throws the match before the house gets warm. You think he's afraid of risk. He's not. He's afraid of being loved for something he doesn't believe he is, because if they love the man he pretends to be, then he must pretend forever or lose everything. So failure becomes sanctuary. When failure becomes home, healing feels like exile, because healing means visibility, openness, accountability, and after a lifetime of playing ghost, that kind of light burns. So he steps backward into the familiar darkness, not because he wants to lose, but because losing feels like control. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. He doesn't get high to feel better. He gets high to stop feeling altogether. The craving isn't for bliss, it's for absence, an erasure of self, of memory, of burden. He's not chasing pleasure, he's chasing the mercy of being gone. To disappear, that's the real addiction. Not from the world, but from himself, from the inner noise that won't shut up, from the shame that sticks even after the apologies, from the identity he never asked for but got stuck wearing. The bottle doesn't love him, but it forgets him. The needle doesn't care, but it lets him vanish. And for a man who's been overseen and underknown, invisibility feels like grace, because being seen without being loved is a form of torture. He used to want connection. Now he just wants quiet. Not silence outside, silence inside, the kind that erases timelines, responsibilities, regrets, the kind that makes him forget he was ever a disappointment, the kind that tastes like freedom, even if it's fatal. Sobriety feels like a spotlight, like standing naked in front of everything he buried. No more excuses, no more buffer, no more anesthesia. He doesn't fear sobriety because it's hard. He fears it because it's honest. And honesty exposes everything, every unfinished wound, every lie he told to survive, every moment he laughed when he was dying inside. Sobriety turns off the music and makes him hear the echo. And that echo says, "This is who you are." But that's not true. That's who he became to function. The drug didn't steal his identity. It preserved it. It wrapped his pain in a soft haze and let him sleep through the fire. But now, without it, the ghosts return, and none of them have forgotten what he tried to forget. So no, the obsession was never the substance. It was the sacred ritual of not being here, of floating above consequence, memory, emotion, of pretending, just for a few hours, that he wasn't himself. And that's what he grieves when the high fades. He thought the battle would end with the drug, that once the substance was gone, so would the suffering. But sobriety isn't peace, it's exposure. The cravings die, and leave behind what created them. The silence he feared now surrounds him, and it's deafening. He blamed the bottle, the screen, the pill, but now they're gone, and the ache remains. And he starts to wonder, was the addiction ever the problem? Or was it the shield from something even worse? Himself, because now, without distraction, the mirror clears. He sees the boy, still waiting for someone to choose him, still bargaining through perfection, still apologizing for existing. That's what the drug hid, not just pain, but origin. The forgotten child, the severed self, the version of him that learned to disappear before he was ever rejected. Healing doesn't feel like light. It feels like grief, not because he misses the drug, but because it protected him from his father's silence, his mother's shame, his own voice. Now he must carry what the addiction used to silence, and it's heavier than he ever imagined. Everyone claps when he says, "I'm clean." And no one asks if he's lonely, because the applause is for the absence of sin, not the presence of self. But recovery isn't a badge. It's a daily confrontation with what the drug postponed. This is why relapse isn't weakness. It's recognition. The body remembers the contract, numb or die. And now that the substance is gone, the pain returns unfiltered. And he wonders, can I survive reality raw? No buffer, no fantasy, no exit door. He doesn't want to use again. He wants to be held again, without performance, without fear. But real connection is slow, uncertain, unscripted. It doesn't offer the instant relief of a chemical, and sometimes he doubts it even exists. The drug died first, the grief came after, and the mirror, it doesn't lie anymore. It shows the man who survived by vanishing, and asks the only question that matters now. Can he stand there, sober, scarred, seen, and not run? Jung once said, "People will do anything to avoid facing their own soul." And he was right. The drug wasn't the problem. The escape was. He wasn't addicted to pleasure. He was addicted to absence, to the ritual of not being here. Nietzsche understood it too. Man doesn't seek pleasure. He seeks meaning. And when that's gone, even pain becomes addictive, because at least it proves he's alive. So he drank, he used, he ran, not to feel more, but to feel less empty. The real detox begins when he stops confusing sedation with safety. This isn't a recovery story. This is a return to the moment he left himself behind. Not in a bottle, not in her arms, but in that silent decision. I don't matter. Healing isn't about willpower. It's about reuniting with the self he buried to be accepted. The drug was a decoy. The enemy was never external. The true antagonist was the ghost of who he thought he had to become, and that ghost only disappears when he stops chasing approval and starts reclaiming truth, when he stops waiting for permission to exist and starts living like someone who belongs here. Integration isn't clean. It's violent, slow, and sacred. It demands that he speak to the parts of himself he exiled, the rage, the hunger, the shame, not to destroy them, but to understand them, because no man heals by amputating his truth. This is the real confrontation, not with the drug, but with the question beneath it: why did I disappear? And the answer isn't found in steps or slogans. It's found in sitting with the ache without trying to edit it, letting the pain be a map, not a monster. The goal isn't abstinence, it's presence. To wake up without dread, to feel without armor, to stand in a room fully seen and not flinch. That's what freedom looks like, not escape, but return. Addiction ends when the man no longer needs to vanish, not because he's healed, but because he finally knows who he is. The mask falls, the war quiets, and he realizes, I was never the craving. I was the soul beneath it, trying to come home. So now what? What if the drug was never the problem, but the decoy? What if everything you called weakness was just grief with no permission to speak? What if your addiction was never about escape, but about trying to feel real again? And what if sobriety isn't the end, but the beginning of a confrontation with your own soul? You've survived the fall. Now comes the harder part, standing still while your truth rises. No more performing, no more pretending, no more sedating your essence. Let me ask you something brutal. What if the version of you you've been running from is the only one who can set you free? The one who felt too much, the one who asked too early, the one who got punished for being real. Maybe he's not broken. Maybe he's just been waiting for you to come back. So don't run from your silence. Go into it. That's where the mirror clears. That's where the war ends. That's where the man begins. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue this journey of brutal self-knowledge and emotional freedom. But what if the craving wasn't just for silence? What if the addict isn't chasing relief, but the ghost of a father who never came home? In the next video, we dive into Jung's hidden truth. Every addiction is a search for the man who was supposed to protect us.